In this lecture, we are going to be adding some jumping and landing VFX to the player. First, let's create two flipbooks for the VFX. Go to the VFX folder under the Asset folder. Create a folder using the name of the VFX jump up file. Then right-click on VFX jump up. Sprite actions, then extract sprites. Let's change the method to grade. We have 8 frames here, so let's divide the width by 8. Alright, let's hit extract. Move the new sprite files into the new folder. Go into the folder, select all the sprites, right-click, select Create Flipbook. Alright, we don't need to change the name of the new flipbook. Let's go back to the VFX folder. Make another folder called VFX Land. Right-click on the VFX Land file. Select Extract Sprites. Change the method to grade. This time, we divide the width by 5. Then we can hit Extract. Move the new files into the VFX Land folder. Then we select all of them and create a flipbook. We also don't need to change the name here. Alright, let's go back to the player blueprint. We need a new component that represents the point where we want to spawn the new VFX flipbooks. So let's add a new component called Scene. The scene is a very basic component. It has a transform that we can use, and it doesn't have too many other functions. Let's rename the new scene component to VFX underscore feet. We need to move it to the point where the player's feet touches the ground. So let's go to the left view. I'm going to move the camera to the left so we have a better view at the player. Now snap to grid is enabled, and we want to decrease the snap size to just 1. This way, we can fine-tune the position of the VFX point. Alright, I think it's in the right place. Then I'm going to select the camera and reset its location. Alright, we're done here. Let's compile the blueprint. Next, we need to create a new blueprint class for the VFX. Let's press the Control key and the spacebar to bring up the content drawer. Then go to the BP folder under the Game folder. Let's make a new folder here and call it VFX. In the folder, let's create a new blueprint class. This is going to be the base class of all the VFX blueprints. And it does not need any fancy functions. So we just select the actor as the parent class. Let's name the new file to bp underscore VFX base. Alright, let's double-click to open it. I'm going to dock the window. You can see there is a default icon in the viewport that comes with the root component. This icon only appears in the editor and it doesn't affect the game. Let's just ignore it for now. The first thing we need is a flipbook component for the animations. Let's make sure the root component is selected. Then we hit the Add button and add a flipbook component. Notice the flipbook component is a child of the root component, and this is what we want. We just need to apply the VFX flipbooks to the source flipbook property here. But we are not going to do it here, since this is the base class for all of the VFX blueprints we are going to create later on. So let's leave it empty here and only apply the flipbooks in the child VFX blueprints we are going to create later on. Let's switch to the event graph. We don't need the event actor begin overlap and the event tick node. We can remove these 2 nodes to keep the graph as clean as possible. No worries. You can add them back anytime you want from the override function list. And in this list, you can find all of the functions you can override from the actor class. There are 2 things we want to do here. Let's drag the paper flipbook component into the event graph. Then we want to set looping to false, because we don't want the VFX animations to loop. And we execute this function in the event begin play. So it happens when the VFX is spawned into the world. The second thing is that we want the VFX to remove itself from the world after the animation is finished. This is easy because there is an event that tells us when the animation is finished. Make sure the paper flipbook is selected, then scroll down. We can find the unfinished playing event. Let's add it to the event graph. This event is going to be called automatically by the engine. We just need to cover what to do when it happens. Let's call the destroy actor function. And it doesn't need a target since the target is already self. We're done here. Let's compile this blueprint. Now we have the parent blueprint settled. We can close it and go ahead to create a child VFX blueprint from it. I think it's also a good idea to save the files we just created. Then let's bring up the content drawer. Right-click on the base class. Select Create Child Blueprint class. I'm going to rename the new blueprint BP underscore VFX underscore jump up. Let's open the new blueprint. Dock the window. Here we have the paper flipbook component. This is inherited from the parent class. Then let's go to the event graph. We can see in the event begin play, the parent begin play is automatically called. This is very important because we set the looping of the flipbook to true in the event begin play in the parent class. And if you do something else here in the event begin play in the child class, it's going to completely override the event begin play. And that means whatever you did in the event begin play in the base class is not going to happen since it's being overridden here by what you do in the event begin play here. So whenever you are overwriting a function from the parent class, you should always call that function from the parent class first. Otherwise, the things that you did in the parent class is not going to happen. And you can see here to the right of event begin play, we have the parent begin play function. And that is calling the same event from the parent class. And by doing this, the nodes we put in the parent class get a chance to run. But of course, there will be some occasions when you want to deliberately override a function in the parent class, which means you intentionally don't want the code in the parent class to run. But that would be another story. Just keep in mind that you do have that option. Back to the event graph here. It seems like the engine knows that it needs to call the parent function first here. Keep in mind that in many other cases, we have to make it a habit to call the parent function on our own. But no worries, I'm going to walk you through these situations later on, alright? Let's go back to the flipbook. Let's assign VFX jump up to the source flipbook. We want the bottom of the animation to be sitting at the central point of the blueprint. So let's go to the 2D view and move the flipbook up to align its bottom line. The sign is blocking our view here. We can select self, change the size of this sign with the editor billboard scale. I'm just going to change it to 0 so we don't see it at all. Alright, now let's select the paper flipbook component. Let's move it up. The final Z location is 28. You can just put in the number in the details panel. Alright, we are done here. Let's compile and save everything. Then let's go back to the player to spawn the VFX. Let's go back to the perspective view. Then switch to the event graph. By the way, if you don't see the event graph in the tabs, you can just click here to open the event graph. Alright, let's get started. First, we need to know when the player is jumping up. And there is a very handy event called onJumped. This is from the character class. This event is going to be triggered whenever the player jumps. So we can use it to spawn a new VFX at the feet of the player. Before we do anything, I like to test if this event works. So let's just print out a message. For the content of the message, I'm just going to say jumped. Alright, let's run the game to test. Now we can see the message in the top left corner. the message is going to disappear shortly, but we do get a new message every time we jump up. Alright, this means the event is working, so we can just delete the print node. Next, we are going to spawn a new VFX blueprint. But before we do this, I just want to declare that this is just for the learning purposes, and this is not the best way to handle the spawning process in an actual game, because we are spawning a VFX blueprint every time the player jumps up, and this is going to have an impact on the memory of the hardware. A more common solution is to use something called the object pool. The basic idea is that you create a pool of the same object beforehand, and whenever you need to spawn a new object into the game world, you just get one from the pool. And whenever you remove an object from the world, you just recycle it and put it back in the pool. This way, nothing is going to be spawned in runtime, which won't create a big impact on the performance of the game. But the object pool is an advanced topic. It's too complicated to talk about it here. So instead, let's do it the easiest way and the simplest way. This is going to keep the course easy to understand and friendly to the beginners. Let's get started. First, there is a function that helps us spawn a new blueprint into the world. The function is called spawn actors from class. Let's connect the event onJumped to it. Then we need to select the class that we want to spawn. So let's search and select the BP VFX jump up we just created. Next, we need to tell the function where we want the new VFX to appear. You can see the function has the spawn transform input. The transform contains the location, the rotation, and the scale, but we only care about the location here. We can right-click on the transform. Then select Split Struct Pane. Now we can just plug something into the location. Let's grab the VFX component we just created into the event graph. And we get its world location. Then connect the world location to the spawn transform location. Alright, that's it. Now every time the player jumps up, a new VFX is going to be spawned at his feet. There is one more thing I want to mention here, which is the collision handling override. Most of the time this won't affect anything, but just to make it safe, I'm going to select Always Spawn, ignore collisions. Basically, this option handles the situation when the collision of the newly spawned object conflicts with another collision shape that's already in the game world. And when you select Always Spawn, a new blueprint instance is always going to be spawned into the world, and any potential conflict on the collision is going to be ignored. Alright, I think we are done here. Let's test the game. It looks good. The VFX appears at the right place. Let's select all of the nodes here and comment out. I'm just going to call it VFX jump up. Also, you might know that you can give the comment a color. So you can use the same color to categorize multiple comments into a group. Next, I want to add another VFX for when the player lands on the ground. And there is also a handy event we can make use of. The event is called onLanded. Like its name, it's going to be triggered whenever the character lands on the ground. We can reuse the nodes up here. Let's just copy them and paste them down. Then connect the event to the function. The only problem is that we do not have the VFX for the landing, so let's create one. Let's bring up the content drawer. Then right-click on the base class. Select Create Child Blueprint Class. Let's name the new one BP_VFX_land. Sometimes you might come to this page when you open a blueprint. In this case, you can just click up here to open the full blueprint editor. I think there is only one thing we need to do here, which is to assign the VFX land flipbook. And that's it. Let's compile the blueprint and close it. Let me also close this one since we don't need it anymore. Alright, now we can select the new blueprint class from the list. Let's select VFX land. Then we can compile and test. Seems like the land VFX appears at the wrong place. So let's go back to open the blueprint and adjust the location. The flipbook component. Go to the viewport here and switch to the 2D view. Select the paper flipbook component. You might also want to change the snap sizes here. Then let's move it until the bottom is in line with the center point. The final Z location is 12. I think you can put the number directly into the details panel. Alright, let's test the game again. Now the land VFX works very well. Alright, before we wrap up, I'd like to comment out these notes. And that's it for this lecture.